My name is Jonathan Pierce. This week I turned 64 years old, and on Monday morning after 31 years with the same company, I was demoted without warning. I remember the very first day I walked into this building. It was 1993. I was a young software engineer, eager and a little shy, carrying an old leather briefcase that used to belong to my father, and the belief that if I worked hard and stayed honest, I'd build something that mattered. And I did. I helped design the compression algorithm that made our CoreNet system 38% faster, an innovation that helped turn our small startup into a global tech powerhouse. I never asked for much, I just worked, I improved, I mentored young engineers, and I waited for the day I could retire with my full benefits and some peace of mind. I never took more than 2 sick days in a year, I never had a complaint filed against me. I received 11 formal awards and held the title of Chief Technical Director for 8 consecutive years. So when I got the email, Jonathan, Monday 9 a.m., meeting with the CEO in conference room 20B mandatory, no rescheduling. I wasn't worried. I figured it was just a strategy session. When I walked into the room, Trevor Simons, our 36-year-old CEO, the kind who grins on Forbes covers, was already seated. He didn't stand to shake my hand. He simply motioned toward the chair across from him. "We value everything you've contributed, Jonathan," he began, smiling with his mouth but not his eyes. "But the company's moving into a new era, and your position is being realigned." I sat in silence. No nodding, no expression. "We've decided to move you into a new role, Senior Technical Advisor. Temporarily, there won't be any direct reports under you, but your salary will remain the same during the transition." I blinked. No team, no authority, no project ownership? Trevor smiled again, not answering directly. "We're hoping you'll assist in mentoring our next generation of leaders." I stared at him for a long moment. "I'm 1 year away from full retirement," I said slowly. "According to my signed agreement, if my executive duties are removed without cause before that date, I'm still entitled to my full severance bonus." Trevor's eyes narrowed, just slightly. "We reviewed your contract, there's no such clause on file." I nodded once. "I see." I stood. "Thank you for your time." I left the room without saying anything more, but in my heart, I already knew something wasn't right, and I was going to find out exactly what it was. The drive home felt slower than usual, not because of traffic but because my mind was spinning with questions. 31 years of loyalty, and they'd reduced my role to a glorified placeholder, with a smile and a carefully rehearsed speech. It wasn't just a restructuring, it was surgical, precise, and timed to perfection. 1 year before I'd reach the age where my full retirement package, including a multi-million-dollar severance, would become legally enforceable. I knew Trevor didn't care about legacy or loyalty. He was hired to modernize the company, to cut fat wherever he could find it. And apparently, that included cutting me out, before my contract matured. When I got home, I didn't even take off my coat. I walked straight into my study, turned on the lamp, and opened the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet. Inside there was a blue binder labeled Employment Original Agreements. The most recent digital version of my contract, the one HR emailed to me last year, didn't mention the severance clause, but I remembered writing it in myself back in 2012 when I renegotiated my executive role after launching the CoreNet expansion. I flipped to the right section. There it was, just as I remembered it. In the event that Mr. Jonathan Pierce is reassigned or terminated without cause within 36 months of reaching the age of retirement, the company shall honor the full payout of his Executive Continuity Package, ECP, including but not limited to bonus incentives, stock allocations, and severance protections. Right below it, my signature, the former CEO's signature, and the legal counsel's stamp. But just to be certain, I reached into the back of the cabinet and unlocked the small, fireproof safe embedded in the floor panel. Inside it were copies of everything, certified originals, backup USB drives, and even old memos that back then seemed unimportant. I had always been meticulous. My late wife used to call it my superpower. Others at work called it overkill. Now, it was about to become my shield. I held the paper in my hands and stared at it for a long time. They had hoped I wouldn't remember. They had counted on my age, my trust, and maybe even a little fear. They were wrong. That evening, I made a call. Not to a lawyer. Not yet. I called Karen Delgado, an old colleague from 20 years back. She used to work in our legal department before moving to Washington. Now she was a senior advisor at the Department of Labor's Office of Employee Protections. When she picked up, her voice was warm but curious. "Jonathan? Wow, it's been years. Everything okay?" I paused. "Not quite. I need your eyes on something. And maybe a little guidance." There was a beat of silence. "All right," she said. "I'm listening." I explained what had happened. The demotion, the missing clause, the original contract in my hand, the timing, 364 days before my full pension kicked in. Karen didn't interrupt. When I finished, she let out a quiet breath. "This sounds deliberate. If they altered the copy on file, that's not just unethical, it could be fraudulent concealment. Send me everything you have, tonight." I scanned the documents. I organized the email chain. I labeled every folder by date and signature. Then I uploaded everything to a secure drive and sent her the link. Before I closed the laptop, I whispered to myself, "You tried to erase me, Trevor, but I never deleted anything." By the next morning, Karen had already read through everything. She called just after sunrise, her voice more clipped and professional this time. "Jonathan, you weren't the first." I sat up straighter in my chair. "What do you mean?" "Over the past 18 months, 3 other senior executives at your company were reassigned or nudged out just before reaching retirement age. 2 of them signed severance waivers. 1 filed a private grievance but disappeared before it went anywhere." I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. "So they've been doing this systematically?" "Looks that way. And if your original contract is legitimate, which it absolutely is, this isn't just a breach, it's part of a corporate strategy to avoid paying millions in earned benefits." I was quiet for a moment. Then, "Can they get away with it?" "Not if you're willing to do something about it." That same afternoon, Karen and I filed a formal complaint through the Department of Labor's Employee Retirement Income Security Act, ERISA, Enforcement Division. She also helped me prepare a sealed report for the company's board of directors and internal audit committee, complete with timelines, contracts, comparison scans, and a short cover letter. "This is not a threat, it is a record of facts. I trust you will handle it accordingly." We didn't make it public, not yet, but I also didn't keep it secret. I blind copied the packet to 3 influential figures. By nightfall, the tremors had begun. The following morning, my phone rang again. The caller ID, restricted. I picked up. "Jonathan, this is Claire Yates from the Internal Audit Committee. We've just received your materials." She sounded rattled. "We'd like to invite you to a confidential meeting with our independent review team. Tomorrow morning, if possible." I waited a beat. "That depends. Is Trevor Simons going to be in that room?" Silence. "No," she said quietly. "He's been placed on administrative leave pending review." I nodded, even though she couldn't see it. "Then I'll be there." That night, I sat in my home office staring at the boxes of files I'd kept over the years. Notes, memos, meeting minutes, even handwritten post-its from old team huddles. I never knew why I kept it all. Now I did. It wasn't paranoia, it was protection. Because when the truth starts leaking through the cracks, the people at the top scramble to plug the holes. But this time, they were too late. I arrived at the office at 8:15 a.m., 15 minutes early for a meeting scheduled at 9. The security guard at the front desk, Malik, looked surprised to see me. "Mr. Pierce, I didn't know you were back." "I'm not," I replied simply. "I'm just visiting." He gave a respectful nod and handed me a visitor badge. As I stepped into the elevator, I caught my own reflection in the polished metal. Neat gray suit, briefcase in hand, calm expression. But beneath the surface, I was alert, prepared. Because this wasn't just a meeting, it was a confrontation in slow motion. And I had every move documented. When I entered the boardroom, 3 people were already waiting. 1. Claire Yates, head of the Internal Audit Committee. 2. Martin Sue, outside legal counsel brought in from a prestigious New York firm. 3. Diana Coleman, a neutral HR consultant overseeing executive transitions. They greeted me cautiously. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Pierce," Claire began. "We're here to better understand the concerns you've raised." I opened my briefcase and pulled out a thick binder labeled Internal Documentation Timeline and Contracts. "I figured you might need some help remembering," I said. The next hour was all business. I walked them through. The original contract with time-stamped emails showing that the severance clause was present in 2012 and removed quietly in a 2019 digital update. 3 separate cases of senior employees being reassigned or terminated just before retirement benefits vested. An email trail between Trevor and 2 finance executives discussing Q4 headcount adjustments to optimize pension liability. At first, they tried to remain neutral. Claire took notes. Martin scribbled something and whispered to Diana. But the more I revealed, the more their posture changed. No one interrupted. No one denied. Eventually, Claire looked up. "This goes beyond a misunderstanding." Martin cleared his throat. Mr. Pierce, I think it's in everyone's interest that we resolve this matter as quickly and discreetly as possible. I looked him in the eye. Discretion is no longer your decision to make. By the time the meeting ended, I had one clear message for them. I'm not here for revenge, I'm here for accountability, for myself, and for every employee you treated like a line item. They asked if I would be willing to meet with the board. I said I'd only meet in the presence of my attorney, and that any future discussion would be documented in writing. From now on, everything would be in the light. That evening, Claire called me personally. We've suspended Trevor Simons indefinitely. We've also launched an internal audit of all executive separation cases from the last 5 years. Then she added more quietly, I don't think the board realized how much power you still had, Jonathan. I replied just as calmly, that's because they forgot something. I didn't get this far by being clever. I got here by being careful. It was 7:12 a.m. the next morning when my phone lit up with a message from Karen. Check Tech Insider, front page, you're in it. I opened the site and there it was. Headline in bold, centered on the screen. Pension sabotage, veteran executive alleges contract, fraud at Texas tech giant. Below it, a photo of the company's headquarters. No names were used yet, but the article cited an anonymous source who had provided internal documents, time-stamped contracts, and evidence of strategic demotions aimed at denying retirement benefits. It was my packet, the one I had blind copied to the reporter 3 days ago. He'd done his homework, verified details, even hinted at a possible federal inquiry. By 9 a.m., the story was trending on LinkedIn. By noon, it was on CNBC's Morning Market Rundown. At 2:43 p.m., the company issued a public statement. We take all claims related to executive compensation seriously. An internal audit is underway, and we are cooperating with authorities. They didn't name me, but the damage was done. That same afternoon, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, I knew the voice immediately. Jonathan, it's Trevor. I said nothing. I just want to talk, man to man. Still nothing. This is getting out of hand. Look, if you walk this back, even quietly, we can still work something out. You don't want this to define your retirement, do you? I waited a full beat, then said, Trevor, I kept every version of every agreement I ever signed. You changed yours, I didn't. And now you're finding out what that costs. This wasn't personal, he shot back. It was business. No, I said calmly. It was fraud, and the difference matters. Then I hung up. That night, I got another call, this time from a federal regulator at the Department of Labor. Karen had referred me as a confidential source. They were opening a preliminary inquiry into not only my case, but into the broader patterns I had uncovered. Mr. Pierce, the voice said, we'd like you to sit down with our oversight panel next week. We've reviewed the materials you submitted. You've provided us with quite a head start. I exhaled slowly. I'll be there. The next morning, someone from the company tried again. This time it was Martin Shu, the outside legal counsel. We'd like to extend a formal offer, full retirement reinstatement, plus a goodwill compensation package for the inconvenience you've suffered. I said I'd review it with my attorney. But in truth, I didn't care about the money anymore. I cared about the pattern, and the people they'd done this to. People who weren't lucky enough to have a locked drawer full of records. The federal building was cold and quiet when I arrived. A gray slab of concrete and glass in downtown Austin, humming with silence and significance. I had been asked to appear before a Department of Labor oversight panel, with representatives from both the ERISA Enforcement Division and the SEC in attendance. Karen met me outside. She was dressed in navy, briefcase in hand, calm as ever. This isn't a trial, she said gently as we walked in, but make no mistake, it's a turning point. Inside I was led to a small, clean room with a long table and 6 chairs on one side. 3 regulators entered. 1 lawyer, 1 investigator, 1 accountant. All introduced themselves. All professional, courteous, but serious. Mr. Pierce, the lead investigator began, we understand you've brought with you documentation relating to potential pension manipulation and contract tampering at your former employer. That's correct, I said, sliding a slim hard drive across the table. And I've arranged the contents chronologically, with summary notes and cross-reference scans. Each major breach is indexed. They looked at one another, then back at me. We've rarely seen documentation this complete from an internal whistleblower, the accountant noted. For the next 3 hours, I walked them through everything. The original contract and the falsified digital version. Internal memos that instructed HR to alter language before reissuance. A pattern of removals, 5 executives in total, 3 of whom never contested their demotion. Emails in which Trevor had referred to long-tenured staff as legacy liabilities. At one point, the SEC attorney leaned forward. "You weren't just careful, you were methodical." "I was trained to think in systems," I said, "and I noticed when someone tried to game the system I helped build. When it was over, they thanked me. One even shook my hand and said, 'You've done more than protect your own pension, Mr. Pierce. You may have just changed how companies approach retirements across this entire sector.'" By the time I returned home, the story had grown larger. A second article had been published, this time naming me directly. Jonathan Pierce, the executive who said no. It included quotes from anonymous insiders confirming the company's practice of quiet exits for retirement-age employees. Public reaction was swift and damning. Social media was flooded with comments like, "This is why people don't trust corporations anymore." 31 years and they tried to erase him? That man kept receipts, and I respect it. I hadn't wanted attention, but now that I had it, I knew exactly what to do with it. The following Monday, I met with my attorney, and we delivered a formal demand letter to the company's legal team. Immediate reinstatement of full retirement benefits. Restoration of all titles and years of service. A written acknowledgement of wrongdoing. A request to audit past demotions of senior staff. They didn't argue. By Thursday, a board vote had taken place. Trevor Simons was terminated for cause. 2 HR executives resigned, and the board released a statement announcing the launch of a retirement ethics initiative. I was offered a consulting role to help design the framework. I declined. "I've done my part," I told them. "Now it's your turn to get it right." 2 months after the hearings, I received a formal letter from the Securities and Exchange Commission. Inside was an official certificate, clean, understated, and a notification that I had been granted a whistleblower award under Section 922 of the Dodd-Frank Act. For providing original information that led to a successful enforcement action, it read, and for demonstrating exceptional cooperation, documentation, and integrity. The award amount was substantial, not life-changing in the Hollywood sense, but enough that I'd never have to worry again. Alongside my fully restored pension, it meant financial peace for the rest of my days. But the money wasn't the reward. The real reward was what followed. I started getting letters, not emails, handwritten letters, from people I'd never met. A former CFO in Ohio who had been forced out 6 months before retirement. A systems architect in Oregon who said she started keeping backups because of your story. A woman in Vermont who told me she printed out my quote, "It wasn't revenge, it was truth," and taped it to her office wall. Some thanked me for being brave. Some just thanked me for not staying silent. One letter I still carry in my coat pocket. It's from a man named Ellis in Kentucky. "I read about what you did. I'm 62. They tried the same thing with me. I didn't think anyone would believe me, until I read your story. Thank you for reminding me that doing the right thing still matters." At home, life returned to a kind of soft normal. I planted tomatoes for the first time in 20 years. I helped my grandson build his first model rocket. I started waking up without the tension in my chest. One night, sitting by the fire with a cup of tea, my daughter asked me, "Dad, do you ever wish you'd left the company earlier?" I thought about it. All those years, all those quiet sacrifices, the birthdays I missed, the anniversaries, the weekends spent rewriting specs no one else cared enough to double-check. I looked at her and smiled. "No, I stayed long enough to see it through. That matters," she nodded. "You didn't just keep the company honest, you kept yourself honest." I never returned to the company headquarters, not even for the farewell luncheon they offered. Instead, I sent a short letter, addressed to the board and copied to the new CEO. "You didn't break me, you simply reminded me who I am." Today, I live a quieter life. No more meetings, no more memos. But I still keep a small folder on my desk, a simple label on the front, "Truth Matters." Inside it, a single printed copy of my original contract, untouched, unaltered, just kept. Because sometimes the strongest thing you can do is not fight, not scream, not threaten. Sometimes you just remember, you document, and when the time comes you speak, and the truth does the rest.